one supervisee was sharing a situation where she felt a lot of uncertainty and she picked a card. And all the others in the group also picked a card which they thought is reflecting the situation. And all of a sudden she realized, oh, okay, I see it through my eyes, but there are different views as well.
Not all the answers came from within herself, but she actually got feedback from other peers.
It's something which belongs to a healthy routine for a coach.
How does that look like? Can you make that very concrete?
I'll make it as a coach, light the spark inside, empower every soul to turn the tide. I'll make it as a coach, help others grow, changing lives with every story I know.
As a coach, you are there for others. You hold a space for them, you facilitate a process that helps them to grow. And sometimes this can be a lonely role that you find yourself in. At least this is how it was for Katja von Glinowiecki, my guest on today's Making of a Coach. When she started out as a coach, she got her training, she had her certificates, and she also had plenty of clients from her networks in international corporations and NGOs. But something was still missing. Despite constant client interactions, Katja actually felt lonely. She wanted a space to debrief difficult sessions. She wanted feedback on her potential blind spots. And for all of that, she wanted more than just an informal chat with another coach. This is how she found Supervision to help her grow as a coach. She found it for her own development, and years later, she even founded Supervision Partners. She made Supervision a second pillar next to her coaching business. And in today's episode, we unpack all of this journey and dive into what this thing called supervision really is. How is it different from coaching? Why is it also not mentoring? How does it impact you as a coach? And could it impact the entire coaching industry if it became the norm? And also, why should we actually not call it supervision, but maybe find a different name for it? So to get started with all of that, I tried a bit of a different get to know lightning round sort of approach today. Let's see how that went and let's go. My first question for you is, what was your most defining professional role?
Well, the most defining is probably my role as a mother, as a professional and a mother. And today it's definitely the role as a supervisor and a coach.
And which projects or ventures are you most proud of?
Founding several brands. There is one very close to my heart. It's the orientation coaching I do for young adults when they leave school and they have to take their first professional decision, what's going to happen with my life in the future. So that's something very close to my heart, but I enjoy a lot. And the second thing, also important, and that's why I'm here today, is definitely Supervision Partners. It had a longer period of development to get there, but it's, I think, the most important at the moment.
Yeah, the first one also sounds very cool, but today we'll dive into supervision eventually. But before, I'm also still wondering, what do you spend most time on in your regular day?
I'm constantly balancing family and my professional life. I never gave up working because it's a part of me. I love my work. I love what I do. And if I don't, I have to change something. And that's probably something describing me the best, that I always seek and search for improvement also in my own professional life. So balancing both and not forgetting myself. That's something I still keep on working on.
I know you also had a long sort of corporate career before you found coaching and supervision. So
Yeah.
if you weren't in coaching today, what would you do today?
Well, actually, it's again connected to my motherhood because I left corporate when I was pregnant with my first child, and we had to relocate because of the job of my husband. I was pregnant I think in the 7th month when we relocated back to Germany. We used to live in China by that time. And I started to be self-employed, and I started my career as a trainer, as a coach, as a supervisor. And before, in my corporate world, I was working in very different fields. In HR, I was working in marketing. I was leading as a regional manager. I developed a new office for the German Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai. I was working in 2 provinces, taking care of all the German companies there. So I would probably work as a team lead somewhere because I love to work in teams, striving for a common goal, changing the world to make a better place. Yeah. So that would have been a fancy corporate career, which I never pursued.
And probably also quite international as it sounds.
Definitely. So that's also something describing me. I used to live in Australia, in France, China twice, and in India. And that's just something I enjoy, working with different cultures, in different cultures, learning different languages, getting to know, countries, people, regions. That's something very close to my heart as well.
And yeah, that reality didn't happen, but instead you found coaching and supervision. And on that path, is there a particular book, podcast, or person that inspired you?
Actually, got inspired to become a coach with my first coaching. So when my husband received the call to go to India for work, his company offered me spouses coaching. So that was my first connection to coaching. And I had an incredible coach from India, and she introduced me to this one-on-one format. Before, I was a trained workshop facilitator, and I used to work with groups and teams, but not in the one-on-one. And that inspired me tremendously, and I started my coaching education. So that was definitely one person I got introduced into this world. Yeah. And today, I think one of your other podcast interviews was with Kirsten Dierolf. And I would say I'm a fangirl of her, as I see my professional growth a lot with her approaches and her stances in the market.
Yeah, and now let me get to the question that I usually ask in the beginning. That is, in your coaching practice today, who's your typical client and what do you usually help them with?
In coaching, I work with managers in phases of transformation, and that has a huge variety. So sometimes I call myself a life stage coach because I like to see our life, also our professional life, in different life stages. No matter if you're a young professional just entering a corporate position or corporate world, or if you come back from parental leave, if you receive your first promotion, right? These are all transition phases. So I do coach professionals from the very junior positions to executives in C-level. So that's quite a range. But what they all have in common is a transformation. So they're in a phase where something changes. We all know our world is changing every day. So the clients I like to work with are often women, so female professionals, as they have very often more challenges in the corporate world.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. And that's you, Katja, as a coach. And then earlier you said if you had pursued your corporate career, you would be very much a team player. And I also know that when you started out as a coach, you said it was sort of a lonely pursuit. And that's also how you found to supervision. And we'll unpack that story in a bit. But to get started, let's maybe define that first. So what is supervision in a nutshell?
It is reflection in a structured, professional way for professionals. Reflection for coaches. I do supervision for all the professionals who work with people, because it can get very lonely if you are in a professional conversation in a one-on-one, what we do as coaches, or if we lead a group of people. So I recently started a supervision group with faculty members from university. So they work with students, they work with human beings. And we need this professional space, safe space to reflect, to grow in our profession for our mental health and for our growth.
So a wide variety of people who can participate. What is supervision not?
Very similar to coaching. It's not therapy. It's not a conversation you have in a coffee shop or in a supermarket with a friend or a colleague, right? It's more than that. And it provides, I think the most important is this structure and this regular approach of supervision.
And what would be a classic challenge where you would say supervision is the right process to go into?
Well, maybe I start here with a little story how I came to supervision. When I started off as a coach, I had clients. I was lucky enough that I worked with NGOs, I worked with corporates, I had my certification, I felt good, and I started off as a client. I knew my tools, I had the right mindset, and here we go. And after a while, I realized how lonely my profession felt. I felt as a solitaire somehow, even though I was working with human beings every day, right? So what was missing, and by that time I didn't have a name for it. I didn't know what supervision is, right? Today I know because I did my certification as a supervisor. But by that time, I didn't. And I had peer coaching. So I asked peers for conversation. I looked for ways how to reflect on cases, how to reflect on my own behavior, how to find new perspectives on certain situations. And supervision gave me that possibility to reflect about that in a safe space where I don't need it to perform. It was just about me to stay grounded, to stay ethical, to become more resilient. Yeah. And I had the feeling, okay, I don't have to figure out everything on my own. So, and that's something my supervisees also feedback. Right? That's something they value in a supervision conversation. No matter if it's a group supervision or a one-on-one. Both can be very powerful, very different, but it's always helpful from a professional perspective.
Yeah, and when you describe this aspect of loneliness, can really relate. Of course, you're always in a different role as a coach from your client. So even though you spend time with another human being, some very in-depth, intimate time in a way, you're sort of separated. I know that from my personal experience, even more drastic on training seminar events, where you also have tight group experience. But when you are in the role of the facilitator, you're always not really part of the group, right? There's the group of participants who go through this as peers, and you are sort of in this other role, which can oftentimes be a bit lonely.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's still my ethical approach as a coach. I have to stay neutral, staying non-judgmental, taking care of that. My own opinion about a situation or case or whatever my client brings, my opinion doesn't kick in, right? And that's sometimes it's difficult after a coaching session or even before working in a client-coach relationship. So, and here to have, that's just one example for supervision, here to have a place where I can go, reflect, unpack, and look at the situation from different perspectives, that can help a lot.
And to have the space where you can allow yourself to be opinionated, for that only, you could also just talk with a peer, like meet another coach, say, hey, can I talk this through with you, or just do that in a natural way. So I guess For an actual structured supervision, there's probably more to it, some sort of developmental goal. How could that look like a bit more specifically?
Yeah, that's a part of the partnering with the coach, right? So the partnering, it's similar to coaching, but the partnering in a supervision conversation is even more important to see, okay, what does the coach or my client in that sense need here today, right? And sometimes they need to vent. Sometimes we celebrate goals, celebrate successes. And I think describes it best as a testimonial I received the other day. One of my clients said, well, supervision is my regular energy refill station. So it helps her to refocus, to stay connected with what really matters in her work. And especially that feeling of, I don't have to figure it out all alone. And that makes me a better coach. And over time, supervision also creates a kind of rhythm of resilience, of a deeper quality, not just for the coach, on the long run, for every client interaction. So, and my great vision, that's also one reason why I founded Supervision Partners, is I want better client interactions. So it's really the quality in here for the client. How can we make sure that every client gets the best coach? In Germany, every social worker, every therapist, they have to have regular supervision. They work with human beings. That's not the case for coaches. And here we come back that coaching is not a protected profession. Everyone can come along and say, I'm a coach. And it makes it very hard for clients to choose. And I think that's also very important in supervision. And nowadays, I write corporate offers. I even write as part of my offer, I note in my offers, who is my supervisor? How regular do I see him? Just for gaining some credibility and quality in my profession.
Yeah, so what you're saying is, if I am a therapist, then being a therapist is a protected, sort of like with certain quality, defined quality standard profession, and it requires you to get supervision. For a coach, that's not the case. That's why you, in your role as a coach, you stress that point. Dear client, dear customer, I am a coach who receives supervision that helps me develop as a human being and as a coach, and I can provide better service also for you.
Yeah. And here comes also my international perspective in, because I used to live in different parts of the world. And the coaching profession is seen in different cultures very differently. And so is supervision. So, for example, in some Asian countries, so Singapore, for example, they have a very strong market stance for coaches. And supervision is something very normal and regular. And every coach has a supervisor. It's completely normal. Similar to the UK in Europe, right? So they have a very good approach from certification to supervision, and they continue supervision. Another example is Romania, also a European country, where the coaching profession is protected. Yeah. So, and they also have a very different approach to supervision. It's something common. It's something which belongs to a healthy routine for a coach.
Okay, thanks. For now, I would really like to unpack how can I, as a coach, imagine supervision. And to get us started with that, let's take the time to do a small picture card exercise.
I love metaphors. I love pictures.
Awesome. Then let's pick a metaphor for what supervision is for you.
I go with my first intuition. That's the woman sitting next to the dog looking at the lake.
Cool. How does that describe supervision?
Well, I see myself as a supervisor, as a partner, having established a trusted relationship with my supervisee. That can be a coach, it can be a manager, it can be someone professional. And we look at something, a situation, we look at the lake, right? Or at the river, and we see it from different perspectives. And we are able to share openly what we see. So because you are in a very safe environment. And there could be another dog, there could be another person sitting there, but it's still a reflective space which we are entering to see the world through our eyes and reflect what can we take out of this peacefulness. Yeah, what do you think?
Beautiful. I think that's also a very beautiful introduction to this next part, looking at how does supervision actually work. So you said we have this reflective space, a very safe reflective space that these two humans or two creatures look at together. Let's make that a bit more concrete. If you were to describe the process of supervision, how would it look like?
Yeah. So there are different supervision tools. Like we have tools in coaching, we can also use tools in supervision. I think the main difference here between coaching and supervision is the professional aspect. So I coach people on their values, their strengths, their private sorrows, their professional challenges, whatever they bring into a coaching conversation. Supervision has a deeper professional aspect, still looking at the person behind the profession. Yeah. So that means in a one-on-one supervision interaction, the structure might feel very similar to a coaching process, right? Where I get into a conversation in a trustful space. I need to have the right chemistry with my supervisor. So it's a very human connection. Otherwise, you could be supervised by AI, right? So there is this human part in. And as a supervisor, I have the possibility to also give feedback, right? So I think a good supervisor also needs a seniority in the coaching profession or in the profession I'm a supervisor for, right? So there is a certain seniority, there is a certain expertise kicking in, yeah, and I need to partner with my supervisee similar way like in coaching so that I can see, okay, what does the person in front of me needs, right? So there's similar aspect to it. And then use different tools. I personally like to use picture cards also in supervision, always very powerful metaphors. What does it tell you about your situation? What would you like to change in the situation? And I do ask open-ended coaching questions also in a supervision. For a group supervision, that's very similar to a group coaching for professionals, right? So the common theme is coaching. So, and that makes it different to a coaching conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So that means there are some similarities between a supervision session and a coaching session. And that is we come together, we have this sort of partnering process. Who can I as a supervisor be for you? And also clarifying the goal, the issue. What did you bring here today?
Yeah.
And then we also use coaching-ish methods, processes. But what I hear from you is that the difference is that at the center of supervision is more this me thriving in my profession as a coach. And that means my supervisor is a more experienced coach than me and is also allowed to go a bit into a coach-salting role, meaning they can also share their expertise, because this is also about me getting maybe very concrete feedback and advice on my profession as a coach.
Yeah, that's a good description. I like the word coach salting. Maybe I give you an example from a conversation I had with my supervisor the other day. I described a situation I'm in and professionally, and I didn't know if my approach is the right one, which suits me, suits my situation. And my supervisor asked me, okay, Katja, how would you like me to react? And I said, right now, what I really would need is an open feedback from you. So, and as a coach, I'm not allowed to give feedback. Or what it means. I'm allowed, but it's not an ethical approach as I think. I believe in my clients that they have all the solutions and answers within themselves, right? I help them to find them, right? So, but in a supervision context, I'm able to ask for feedback. So, supervision can be sometimes also a mixed profession of mentoring, consulting, and coaching for professionals.
Great. You just described the process. And you said you are using similar tools like you use in coaching, and you mentioned picture cards. How would you use picture cards?
Yeah, I love to use picture cards in group supervision and also in one-on-one and individual supervision with a similar approach like you just did. I show a set of cards and ask, for example, okay, how does that relate to your current situation? Yeah. I let them pick and I go through and see what's happening, right? And often the perspective changes. For example, in a group supervision I've done a couple of days ago, I offered all the participants to pick a card. One supervisee was sharing a situation where she felt a lot of uncertainty and challenges around. She picked a card. And all the others in the group also picked a card which they thought is reflecting the situation. And all of a sudden she realized, oh, okay, I see it through my eyes, but there are different views as well through the different pictures we had all of a sudden. So we had 5 different pictures for one situation. So in that case, she developed a different kind of confidence that, of course, she found a way how to move forward, yeah, through reflecting, because all the other participants also shared, okay, why did I pick that picture? What do I see in here? And how does it relate to the situation the other coach shared, right? And she had a different set of conclusions to walk away with. And that helps tremendously.
Yeah, that sounds really powerful. And I think it also really visualizes nicely how supervision is different from coaching, because in your example, the coach in her role as a supervisee there, she shared her situation, and then not all the answers came from within herself, but she actually got feedback from other peers. And all of that was happening in a facilitated process, facilitated by you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so important that we are in a trustful environment, in a psychological safe space, which is non-judgmental. And that's how everyone enters this room. And that sets it apart from many other situations where you coach a group or a team where everyone has their own agenda, of course, right? And in this context, it's just a different work environment.
And can you talk a bit about these relationship dynamics? Because it also sounds somewhat complex in a way. Because I think in coaching, we often say a good coach is sort of invisible and just helps the client to come up with the answers themselves. But here, I believe it's more complex because as a supervisor, you said you usually have more seniority, more experience, more power, maybe, as the supervisee. And then I guess that gets even much more complex when we have a group. So can you talk a bit about these relationship dynamics, maybe first in the one-on-one supervision setting and then in the group?
I'm not sure if it's really more complicated. I mean, as a group or a team coach, you also have to be very flexible and agile and to look at these team dynamics, right? Or group dynamics. And you have to be aware of. And in my groups, it is when I work with regular group supervision, I have to make sure that different personalities also fit together. So I don't call up a group of coaches and say, I start a new group supervision, everyone can come in. That I make sure, and that's one of my responsibilities as a supervisor, that the group has a certain harmony, that they have a chemistry, right? And I think for the matching of such a group, I always have one-on-ones before we start in the supervision process, right? I have to see and to feel. And what I do is I use my gut feeling and my experience, my expertise in here. And I think that's where the seniority kicks in. I use that to set up a small group. So in a supervision group, there are never more than 5 coaches. So I have only maximum 5 participants. So it's a very small group where we work together. Doesn't matter if virtual or face-to-face. So it's a small group. And I have to make sure that this group has a good harmony. Yeah. It doesn't mean that they are not diverse. It can be a very diverse group, but there has to be a certain chemistry in the room.
And how do you set up these groups? You just said you have one-on-one conversations with each of the group members, are actually also in a one-on-one supervision process with you. And then you say, okay, let's meet in a group setting. Or how does that pre-work look like?
Sometimes that's the case. I just, when I open a new supervision group, send out an invitation to my network through our newsletter and so on. We are starting a new group supervision, and there are some recommendations how often that should take place and so on. Schedule these groups according to time zones, according to individual needs, according to language, because I do both Nanette and I, we both do supervision in English and in German. So these are all factors we have to consider. And then I make a call and say, okay, we open a new group. Who would like to join? And what are your preferences? We wait, who comes, we see, and we have quick one-on-ones. That's usually 15 minutes, half an hour. We set up this group. Sometimes some of the group members are also individual clients for supervision, but it's not a must.
And then the group meets once at least, but possibly also more often, it sounds like.
Yeah, we usually schedule yearly programs where we meet every quarter, so 4 times a year. I can also tell you why. So there are a couple of organizations, for example, the EMCC, the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, they have, for their certifications, you have to have supervision. So it's one of the organizations who think that's very beneficial. That's also coming in the ICF credentials. You also need to have supervision, at least as a team coach. I think for the individual coaches, that will also come sooner or later, because they see the benefits in here. And the EMCC, for example, they recommend after every 35 coaching interactions, you should have at least 1 hour supervision.
After every 35 sessions, I do a supervision session for myself.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Just for your professional hygiene. If you have additional challenges, you can do it more, right? But that's just a number where you as a coach get an impression, okay, how often should I do that?
And at Supervision Partners, in your own practice, what is sort of your main service? Is it that one-on-one or the groups more? Like, how are the different buckets distributed? Half one-on-one, half groups.
It's half.
And compared to the supervision, how much coaching do you still do yourself?
Well, I still coach a lot because I love it. I love what I'm doing. And I would say I still have 30% of my work time is coaching. Yeah.
Okay. And in the remaining time, who are your supervisees? Are these all coaches? Because earlier you also mentioned leaders. How does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we started off with coaches in our profession because that's our vision, our mission to really get all the benefits I explained earlier, what we see from supervision, to get it out into the coaching world, especially in the DACH region. So for Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, that's where we started off. By now, we are getting more and more international clients because we work both virtually quite often, because that's just a very common practice and it's easy accessible and to fit in your day.
How would it look like from the coach supervisee side? When I sign up with you to do a supervision, how much does that cost me, and what sort of are my buying options?
Yeah. So that's a very important aspect. So many coaches or managers don't see the benefit in supervision yet. So that's why we keep on offering teaser supervisions to make them feel, what benefit do I get from supervision. And for the investment, it really depends if you book a one-on-one or a group. Usually you can count the same hourly rate than a coaching session would have.
And what is that?
Well, it really depends on the client we have. So we have company rates and we have individual rates. And the individual rate, it's a variety between 150 euro and 250 euro an hour, just to give you a rough number.
Yeah, and for you as a business, how are you building it? What's the share of corporate versus individual clients?
It's half-half. We would love to have more corporate clients, not because of the pay rate, because of our experience that coaching in organizations gets more and more common. And these coaches, they usually do a certification course to become a coach, and that's it. Very often they are not engaged with a coaching organization like the ICF or the EMCC or all the other bodies who are existing. So they don't pursue this regular update of their skills. And supervision can help here. And that's why I think what we can really provide for internal coaching networks is a regular, structured way for developing your own coach personality with all the benefits attached.
Yeah, and I can see how that makes sense for you from a business perspective, because, of course, I guess it's nice to have these nice recurring corporate clients, but also from an impact perspective, it sounds super useful. I guess many coaches who engage with ICF or EMCC to get certified, they also often do it for business reasons, right? They want to have that certificate and get the supervision and the education as sort of a collateral benefit. If I'm a coach employed in a big corporate who's going through a transformation, or I'm an agile coach working with technical teams, then I don't care so much about the ICF label because I'm not required to get clients. And that's why it's even more important that I have a space where I can work on my professional development as a coach.
Yeah, exactly. And additionally to that, I would like to add that it makes also our actually second target group that we say we also offer supervision for managers who use coaching skills in their work, right? Because when you do that as a leader, there is not the pure coaching in your skills, right? So usually our managing clients, they have had a basic coach education or they went through an executive course for coaches, and they use coaching skills in their work as a team leader, for example. And for them, it's similar important to reflect about their professional approach that brought us to that second target group. That's why we say, okay, we offer supervision to coaches, but at the same time, for managers, executives, or for facilitators or faculty members, everyone who is engaged with people.
Yeah, it really, like, what keeps crossing my mind is here, like, this group supervision concept would be awesome for entrepreneurs. But I also think you couldn't call it supervision because I'm an entrepreneur, because I don't want to have supervisor as in a boss. So you would have to frame this differently. And that's also something you mentioned earlier when you said, well, especially in the DACH region, supervision is not that common. And that's maybe simply the term. I think people would love the concept and the process, but the term sort of has this notion of hierarchy. Maybe I dislike. So what are you doing about that to resolve that marketing problem, actually?
It is a marketing problem. That's why we are in the process right now to solve that marketing problem with an expert in marketing. So we work with a communication expert who is helping us to reframe the term. Yeah. Because as you said, it's hierarchy we think of, it's control we think of, it's negatively impacted just by the word, and it doesn't transport the benefits. I just explained what the benefits are.
And what's your current best guess for a good reframe?
I ask always when I leave a group supervision with when I had the teaser session or so, I always ask the participants, what is supervision for you? So they said it's crowdsourcing. It's a mental wellness retreat for coaches. It's an energy booster. It's an aftercare after your coach education. It's a natural process. It's reflectivity. It's a non-class class for coaches. It's an energy refill station. So we have to channel that down into one single word, or commonly a more understandable definition of supervision. I keep you posted.
Yes, please. Earlier, I thought about mentoring, but it's certainly not that, right? Mentoring has this much, much stronger salting in coach salting. It's much more this open, safe space where I bring my stuff versus mentoring. So if we would make this a scale, then it would be coaching, mainly holding space, coach being in a very invisible role, supervision, bringing in a bit this sort of, I can give you expertise and feedback on the role, towards all the way mentoring, I really tell you how you can do things.
Yeah. And there is the coaching aspect in. Don't forget the coaching. So there are different roles. And not in every interaction in supervision, they are equally displayed, because that makes supervision so individual and flexible, as I need to ask my client in that moment, my supervisee, what do you need right now?
Yeah. So you have this partnering, this who can I be?
There is a lot of partnering, and I especially got trained in solution-focused supervision, which is really focusing on the person in front of me.
Yeah. Cool. So how would the coaching profession change if supervision would become the norm?
It would become more professional. And my biggest hope in here is that we get more clarity for our clients into what is a coach. So because the term is just so, there's a lot of variety in how you define what a coach is. So I really hope that it becomes also a healthier place to work as a coach.
Yeah, I think these sort of standardization, quality control, that I feel that also. But from what I heard about supervision, I think it mainly makes the industry better for the coaches themselves.
Yeah. So supervision is not just self-care, it's a professional care.
Cool. And if I'm a coach listening who has never tried supervision, what would be my first step?
Well, get in contact with us or with other supervisors. Look up who is a supervisor. So for me, I'm certified and accredited with the EMCC and also with the ICF as a team supervisor, team coach supervisor. So get in touch with us, get in touch with some of the professional bodies who are offering supervision. You can also always ask your coaching institute. So most of the institutes where coaches take their courses to become certified and accredited, they also offer supervision. Just do it for your professional growth, I would recommend. Yeah. And have a couple of teaser sessions. So it's like choosing a coach. Yeah. Do you pick the first one? Do you pick one who's got recommended, or how do you pick a coach? And it's very similar for coaches. How do you pick a supervisor? I think it's very important also to have this. Yeah, I don't like the term chemistry call, but I think it's important to see if the chemistry is the right one. Can we work together? Can we benefit from each other? And if not, keep out looking for another supervisor.
Good. Thanks so much, Katja. Keep looking for a supervisor. Yeah. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would still love to share?
No, I thank you. I thank you a lot for the conversation. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to the listeners who want to learn more about supervision and want to get to know the benefits of supervision.
This is it for today. And I really enjoyed how authentically Katja shared her own journey, both from the supervisee and the supervisor perspective. And what I would have really loved to unpack a bit more and go into more detail are the methods and the processes that she's using, especially for the group sessions that she described. Maybe we can do this one day on our MetaFox community, because this is a space that we are currently launching for these kinds of purposes. We want to enable you to connect with Katja directly, but also to other coaches, facilitators, and listeners of this podcast. We want to host not only these podcast conversations, but also more structured courses and meet for regular exchange and practice calls. My co-founder Max is driving this right now, and if it sounds interesting to you, then go to join.metafox.community and be one of the first members to join for free and co-shape how this evolves. If you want to connect with Katja, you can find her LinkedIn as well as her several websites in our show notes. That's it for the Making of the Coach this week. If you enjoyed, please share this episode with a friend, subscribe and leave a review. I'm Toby from Metafox and wish you all the best on your own journey. Bye-bye.
I'll make it as a coach, light the spark inside, empower every soul to turn the tide. I'll make it as a coach, help others grow, changing lives with every story I know.